Hello and welcome back to Art Laughs with me, Verity Babs. Today I'm speaking to Chelsea Birkby.
Hi everyone, I'm Chelsea Birkby, at Chelsea Birkby, a comedian and silly Billy.
And you have picked a piece for us to talk about today, and it's a self-portrait by Van Gogh. And could you just let me know, why you've picked this? What do you like about it?
Yes, first of all, I'm so glad you said his name first because I was going to go with Van Gogh, but I have been corrected before.
I think no matter what you say, someone will be like, actually, it's...
Van Gogh, I've selected, I love all of his self-portraits and a lot of his work, but I've chosen this one because it's the prettiest, in my opinion. I love the swirly blues in it, which is a technical term, and his mournful look. And the reason I don't know that much about art in general, but I love Van Gogh. I love just how his art looks to my eyes. And also I went to the Van Gogh Museum when I was in Amsterdam, and it was the most beautiful museum I've ever been to. I really connected with it. I cried. Although the night before I had mushrooms for the first time and seen my own personality. So it could be some of that mixed in. But it was done in such a nice way because it was all donated by his brother Theo,
Mm.
and it weaves. I used the audio guide, and it weaves it between like his work and the letters they'd write to each other. So you really get a sense of his life, and it was so beautiful.
That's amazing. I think also that's a very fair thing about the mushrooms, because sometimes, like, the reason why I like a particular artist is because I had a really great time when I saw that exhibition with my mum, and you've got those like correlations between, I like Damien Hirst because I like my mum.
Yeah,
I've never been to the Van Gogh Museum, and I think Van Gogh's works are brilliant, but I think they're really beautiful, but I do think that without his story, and it's interesting that they exhibited it and they curated it, like reminding you of his life. I think that without that story, and he didn't sell anything other than to his brother, and he has this traumatic life, that without that, I'm not sure whether people would be that fussed.
I
But
think that's probably true, and I don't think I'd know about him if it wasn't for his big reputation because I don't know that much about art. It does weave into it, and it weaves into why I like it as well, because Van Gogh had a lot of mental health issues, which is obvious because he cut his ear off.
yeah,
Um,
that's a telltale symptom.
yeah, that's one of the ones that when you go and see your doctor to get that like depression test, that's one of the ones they're like, oh, can I see both ears? I have got the full ear. But I resonated with him because I have had major periods of depression. Well, I have bipolar disorder. Allegedly, I don't, as here's an update, Babs, I don't think I have it anymore, but my doctor told me that's a classic sign.
Yeah, I suppose for a mental health condition that's based on sometimes feeling great, being like, I think I'm better, it's probably, again, they're probably like, this is troublesome.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, like I do connect with like the depression in his paintings. Like even though a lot of them are very colourful, especially like his later works, there's a real sadness to them. And the one that touched me the most was his final painting, which I think is called Apricot Blossom, or it's some kind of blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And he made that for his brother's son, so his nephew. And it's just so optimistic and hopeful, but there's still so much sadness in it. And then when I was off work once, very depressed for like months, I got a paint by numbers version of it. And it helped because when you're just that kind of, you can't really get yourself to do anything, but if you can just paint a number,
Yeah,
you can keep doing that bit by bit. I don't think I got the painting finished, but it was a helpful process.
it's a success, just having done, like, I've done all the threes are
Yeah,
done.
did all the threes.
With Van Gogh's work is that looking at them, even things like his still lives, or he does a lot of like painting the inside of his bedrooms, even though the colours are super bright, here we've got this amazing background that uses for Starry Night as well, actually they're all sort of about isolation, or he's painting the room that he lives in on his own, and the one jacket and the one chair, and it's just him in this sort of void, or like isolating these flowers rather than it being, I don't know, I think that's one of the quite interesting things about, like, I guess you could like draw a link to kind of mental illness generally, is that, like, think about how many comedians are depressed, and that thing of like, it looks so beautiful and fun, but I don't know how to cope.
I really like as well that there's so many of them were self-portraits, and I was looking into it, and some people are like, is it vanity, is it not? But apparently it's because he posted so many He did so many I said posted like it's an Instagram post. Yeah, he did so many because he couldn't afford an iPhone. No, he couldn't afford it. But what I really like about that, though, is that they are so different. He has different looks, and like, you know, sometimes he's in the straw hat and he was really interested in like peasant life, and then sometimes he's in his brother's business suit. And two great ones are the one of him painting, and I think that's such a statement to do a self-portrait that is like me as an artist. And then the one, of course, with his bandaged ear.
I think that's really interesting as well, the idea of the self-portrait, because I studied it briefly at the beginning of my degree, you know, the idea of the self-portrait and, you know, is it the artist's job to show themselves, etc. And it's like, we never really judge, you know, earlier self-portraits as vanity until women artists start doing it. And, you know, I think you'll take this crown happily, a selfie queen.
I'm a selfie queen.
And I suppose, you know, by part of being an artist, he puts himself out in the public eye, and being a comedian, you put yourself out in the public eye. And I think that one has to have a pretty strong, if not complex, idea of self to do that.
I think they're so similar. I think a lot of the best modern stand-up is basically self-portraiture, because so much of it is first person. People always advise you when you start out in stand-up for your opening line to be something about yourself that the audience can latch onto, and that's why so many people are like, I know what you're thinking, I look like a, and then whatever it is, or like, yeah, I'm from Manchester. But so much of it is self-portraiture. It's like, how do you see me? How do I want to be seen? And talking through that. So yeah, there was a really good Radio 4 podcast about self-portraiture, and it was through all the different art forms, and it included like poetry and filmmaking, and it didn't have stand-up, which I kind of expected, but I think it really is an oversight, because it just seems to me to be very obvious self-portraiture. Not in all cases, obviously, if someone's doing like a clown adaptation of something, that might not be self-portraiture. Although maybe it is, because I did a few clown classes and they were one of the like hardest psychological experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, was the hardest thing about the clown courses, for me, I imagine that it would be sort of breaking through a sort of self-aware barrier. For some reason, when it's improv, I'm perfectly happy to play like a horrible little gremlin. But as soon as it's, you know, me not being a character, just being a horrid little gremlin, I'm like, I'm not a horrid little gremlin.
Yeah, it is hard to break through that. And a lot of it is people acting goofy as well. Like a lot of the bad clowning we all did was like when we were trying to be like, what's a goofy clown thing to do? And the clown marshal would always be like, no, you're performing being a clown, just be a clown.
The clown marshal?
Clown master.
With a whip and a nose.
He didn't have a drum that he would hit.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was so, I felt so vulnerable and so exposed. Like there was this one game where it was called Get the Shoe, and you'd come out from behind the screen and you'd do whatever you could, using props or not, to get towards the shoe. And you could go a step towards it when people are laughing, and you'd have to go a step back when you were getting no response. And it's basically impossible to get the shoe. But in the time when you're trying to walk towards it and you're getting nothing, and you just have to try and make something out of nothing, it's just excruciating. And you have to just play, and you have to just do things. I think being a clown is maybe what's the most sincere I've ever been. The first day of clown school I ever did, I loved it, found it really hard, but all of those things. And then on the way home, I just started to feel like a really deep sadness. And I think it was just playing, just like really connecting with your inner child and playing and just being so vulnerable. And then there is like an after effect of that, of just feeling so exposed.
With both painting and stand-up, right? You do it, you sort of decide it on your own. And I think a lot of people don't know that with stand-up, there's a lot of writing it in your bedroom and tweaking it and doing it at really small pub gigs and then changing it and developing it. And I guess at least with a painting, you can be like, I'm now happy to release this into the wild. Whereas I guess with comedy, you have to go through a lot more excruciating pain before it's ready for the world.
Yeah, and you have to check, like with a self-portrait that you've painted, you put that out there and it's done. Whereas if stand-up, in my idea, stand-up is self-portraiture, some stand-up, you can't, you have to check they're on board at every moment. Like you can't just present it and it's done. You have to keep bringing them along the whole time. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Why do we do it?
I love Van Gogh's works. I really do. I think they're really beautiful, but it is just so hard to separate, artist from art. With Van Gogh, we can't separate his story from his work. But now, I guess also in like cancel culture, if someone behaves badly or is politically incorrect, then it is really hard to ever reconcile a career after that, I reckon.
I think so, because I can laugh at stuff that I don't agree with, so long as it's like, so I could laugh at jokes like Tory jokes if they're funny, but it's more when someone's misled you, like, which has happened with me too. People are presenting as one thing and then they're revealed to be very different and treat people very differently. Whereas if it's just a matter of difference of opinion, I can still find it funny if it's a good joke. I don't feel like I have to agree with everything I laugh at. But if I laughed at it and in part it was because I agreed with it, and then later it was revealed like they're not who they say they are, then I think that's ruined.
That's interesting. I guess because it's like a circuit and people know each other. It's interesting about this idea of the reveal of like they were so funny on stage and then they got off stage and then they said something sexist, or and that plays with you more than of all the big boys of art history. Almost all of them had some other artist say, by the way, they were a complete dick, but no one really cares because of this like talent that they have. And over the years people forget that they were awful, or Gauguin married a 13-year-old, and they're all super dodgy, but everyone kind of forgets that in the name of art. But I guess with comedy it'd be pretty hard to, I think people aren't really, Woody Allen is not going to recover from his life choices.
And do you think that is because they are a part of it? It's not like something they make and put out, like, I mean, there may be a specialist, but it's still performed by them and it's kind of about them. They're really integral to it.
I think it's that thing of, I don't know whether this is a new thing or not, but in the same way that you're like, oh, I have this really great shop opposite me and I love the stuff they sell, but the guy behind the counter once did this, he once hit someone with an axe, you'd be like, I don't approve of that. So maybe it isn't about like separating, the produce from the producer. Maybe it is just, and maybe there is a sort of cultural fear of supporting stuff that we think is bad because social media and cancel culture, you can't really be sure that someone won't go, you once laughed at a joke by a man who was later revealed to fancy 17-year-olds. Like,
yeah, but laughing isn't necessarily agreement. I mean, it can be. There's a lot of like clapter.
Explain clapter for our audience, Chelsea.
Clapter is where instead of laughter you get, so you might do a joke. It's really useful if a joke doesn't work, because you can just then at the end of it add like, and that's why feminism is essential, and everyone's like, yeah. Back to selfies. As you called me a selfie queen, and I'm delighted. I love them, and I think it's really, part of what I love about them is how people think they're vain, especially when it's women. But I think it's hugely empowering to like have control of your image and present yourself how you want to be presented. I love doing that with selfies. I love doing like very sexy selfies or like really unflattering ones. I don't know. I really love it. I just love it.
You were recently the victim of a scammer who created a profile in your image. Was that strange?
It was so weird. Yeah,
I've made those images, but it's different with you using them.
It was really it was really frightening. Like, it was just it looked identical to my Instagram account, and so they could actually message people, and people would probably assume that it was me because it was just Chelsea Birkby but without the Y. And they were messaging people really weird shit, because I got a message from one of our mutual friends. He messaged one of my housemates and was like, is Chelsea okay? And I'd been messaging him stuff. The opener was, have you forgotten about me? Which is so embarrassing, because if they sent that to him, who else might they have sent that to? And it could be like anyone I've ever previously gigged with. It could be like, what if they messaged that to like, I don't know, like James Acaster, who I gigged with once. Like,
I say go for it.
It's excruciating. And then he was doing the guy that my scammer was messaging was hosting this thing at the cinema, and he was like, oh, did Sarah invite you to that? And me replied saying, you mean you have a movie lunch and invite me? And the whole time, our friend didn't get that. He just thought I was acting strange. He never thought at any point this could be somebody else. He was like, oh, Chelsea's just having an episode or something.
Like, that is horrifying, right? Like, everyone,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think, obviously, now it's, anyone can download a photo from the internet and be like, that's now my face for the, as far as anyone on the internet is concerned. And yet, I think we've never been more aware and in ownership of our image at a time where actually you're not really in ownership of your image at all, really.
Because it can just be taken.
No one's like cutting out Van Gogh's portraits and being like, this is a self-portrait of me. And then I was not. It doesn't look like you, mate.
It was frightening, but at the same time I was kind of flattered. It was like, oh, I can be a catfish.
Well, exactly. And they were pretty hot pickies.
Thank you. Yeah, they chose some good ones.
Yeah, exactly. So fair play. You can have them.
Do you like it? You're not really, you have great photos of you, but they're usually taken by other people, which I do think is probably cooler. But you're not much of a selfie taker.
I go through phases, I think. I do go through phases. I'm not sure. I feel like it's too simplistic to say I take more selfies when I'm unhappy. I feel like I take more selfies that I send to my friends when I'm happy and more that I put on the internet when I'm sad. I'm probably more vain than I've ever been, but just in person.
When you take them when you're sad, have you ever taken a crying selfie?
Oh, yeah. One time I was like, this is so awful. I want to remember how awful this was.
It's a really weird, like, modern phenomena. I wondered if you take more when you're sad because you want to understand, like, because when I'm sad, often I feel really disconnected from myself. And then if I take a selfie, I think I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, maybe it's a connecting to me thing rather than trying to connect to people who like me, like rather than it being I really want some likes to cheer me up. Maybe it's this is my face. This, I exist. All is well.
I exist. I acknowledge my sadness.
Van Gogh isn't ever doing a chirpy self-portrait when he's having a great time. Potentially there is a thing there of, it's more interesting as an artist to be like, I'm exploring the pits of depression in this piece than to be like, I had a great day that day. I had a sandwich, I had a walk in the park, I'm having a great time. I think Van Gogh wouldn't bother to paint on that day. Yeah,
I agree. Do you think his Instagram would be successful if he is just like depressed again? Might cut my ear off, lol.
I don't know. I think he'd be like, have a really unsuccessful Instagram but have like a really popular Tumblr.
You've called it exactly.
Yeah. Or like the kids from school wouldn't know that he had this really like a really famous Tumblr, and then he'd be like on the Tumblr bitching about the kids from school, and then the kids from school would like it, and he'd be like, oh, the irony.
He'd get an incredible amount of reblogs. But then his Instagram might only have like 100.
If he sold more, yeah, exactly. What it's like, if he got more likes, would he be happier? Probably not.
Probably not. He did say something, and I'm like absolutely murdering the quote, but it was like, he said, even if I never sell a painting in my life, I'm happy because this is meaningful to me. And I think when you're creating any art or trying to, you have to just pursue what you find meaningful and what you think's good. Because I don't think you can, like, you can't really pursue success. It can either like ensue or not. Like, you have to just create something that you think is good. And I know for me, on a much smaller scale, I've even had jokes, like bits that work really well, but I just feel like, I don't feel like I'm truly expressing myself in that. And it was a difficult decision whether to cut it or not, especially for, like, I don't know, competitions and things like that. Because I think, oh, well, this is a successful bit, but it wouldn't make me happy even if it went well. And I was like, no, I'm going to do what I like to do, even if it's worse and people don't like it as much.
Well, that's so interesting, this idea of it being properly like, is this me expressing myself better, rather than the goal of comedy to be like, make this as funny as possible.
Yeah.
Because obviously there are comedians who don't do anecdotal stuff, or it's clowning or whatever. So yeah, like from my experience, I don't think I ever wanted to be my authentic self on stage. So it's really interesting to be like, no, that's not me. That's not me being who I am. But
you do tell stories though, don't you? But you are very silly.
They're mostly stories that are like half truths and then a really massive lie.
What?
I know, it's all a lie. But I don't know, I think that I probably get off on it but not being me.
Okay, well, to mix it up, I have some art on display here that I'd like to show you.
Please show us. You were doing art during lockdown.
Oh, I was, but this is not my art. It is. Oh, this is so dirty. This is Khloe Kardashian, and this is her mugshot from when she was arrested, which I don't support being arrested. But the reason I have it framed is because there's a Kardashians episode, and at one of Kim's early apartments, she's just got this framed mugshot of Khloe up in her house in the background. And I must think of that about every week.
But you did also do some painting in lockdown. And was that a therapeutic thing? Is that something you've always done?
I know, I've never painted. I did it because, Grayson Perry was doing his art club.
That was great.
And I thought, I love a course. And it was like 6 weeks. And I was like, okay, I'll sign up to this. And I just did one every week.
I'll sign up to the television.
Sign up to the television. Yeah, nobody, it didn't make any sense. But I think I was just desperate to be like, I've got to do something. I've got to make something. I enjoyed it. It was frustrating because I think the reason I stopped art after school is because I couldn't make things look how I wanted them to look. But then when I was very unwell, once in day hospital, we did art therapy, and it was like a classic, exactly what you'd imagine. Like somebody was working on something for the full hour, and then we were showing each other our art at the end, and she just coloured a whole page black. And that person was me. It was only actually from doing it there that I was like, oh, you can just do art because you enjoy it and try and make something you think looks nice. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to make a good piece of art. So that was quite liberating. And in lockdown, I thought, well, I've got time and I'm not making other things. So I'll make some art.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I was going to say us, it's just me. Can you please let us know where we can follow you and hear what you're up to?
Yes, you can follow me at Chelsea Birkby on Instagram. Instagram's the main one. Don't follow at Chelsea Birkby without a Y, because that person is not me.
It's a dirty scammer.
You can find out more on my website, which actually is one of my biggest art projects I've ever done. And that's www.chelseabirkby.com. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. You can follow Chelsea in the ways written below. And as per usual, you can follow me at VerityBabsArt on Instagram. Please do give us a subscribe and a like and a share, and I will see you next time.